Hey guys, it's Alex from 7th Hour Films, back again with Merlin. Last time on Merlin, we had Beauty and the Beast Part 2. Yes, continuing on from Beauty and the Beast Part 1, we continued to try to thwart the plans of the troll posing as the Lady Katrina, now Queen Katrina. Eventually, they were able to figure out how to reveal her to be a troll in front of all of Camelot. The only unfortunate thing about it was that Uther was still under her control, so he didn't really see it at all, which caused a whole lot of conflicts between him and Arthur, down to Uther actually disinheriting Arthur and giving his inheritance to Katrina, which was pretty crazy. And then, let's see, what else happened? Well, they did manage to break the curse, thankfully. Break the enchantment on Uther by making him cry remorseful tears, which they did by faking Arthur's death. And then they killed both Katrina and Jonas. And that was that. This is where I say no spoilers in the comments whatsoever. Let's stick to this episode and previous episodes of Merlin that I have reacted to. This is also where I say that if you want to watch my reaction to this episode of Merlin, it is not in this video due to copyright reasons. So if you want to watch my nice 10-minute highlight reaction with the footage in the corner and it's all edited and nice and good, you can go down into the description or to the pinned comments on this video. It should say Merlin 2x7 reaction highlight and give a link. You click on that link, it'll take you over to my highlight reaction. And you can watch it and hopefully have a good time. And when you're done with that, you be sure you come back to this original video for the discussion. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into this episode of Merlin. Here we go. Man, that got tense. I got tense in a couple places. That was crazy. Oh boy. Oh man, all of this is kind of a dark episode. Kind of a dark episode of Merlin. Yet this is all based on Merlin being an idiot and making an image in smoke. Like, the whole episode is predicated on Merlin being an idiot. Which, I guess to be fair, that's what most Merlin episodes are predicated on. But, man, oh man, that was just so dumb what he did. And even at the beginning, like when he started doing that, I was like, Merlin, someone could see that. I like that was the point of the episode. Someone did actually see it. Oh, man. Oh, man. I do kind of wish that they hadn't put in the credits Charles Dance's name at the beginning, because his name showed up before he did. So I kind of wish I hadn't seen that. So when they did the reveal and he looked up from his hat, that would be the reveal. Instead I just saw his name. I was like, uh-oh, Charles Dance is coming. He's so imposing, He's so imposing and intimidating, and his voice is just nuts. And this is on a show where we already have a guy who is imposing and intimidating with a crazy voice. Uther is all those things, and here comes Charles Dance just to outdo him in everything that he is, basically. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the first thing I wrote down was the smoke. Merlin being a moron. Yeah. Merlin being a moron and making an image in the smoke, and sure enough, someone seeing it. What an idiot. Like, seriously, man. It is, like, ridiculous how stupid Merlin can be sometimes, but it did lead into the rest of the episode, which was good. So Merlin, he makes a smoke, someone sees and reports it to Uther, and for some reason, of all the times that magic has shown up in this series, it's only now that Uther decides to bring in the Witchfinder. Only now does he decide to do that. Like, that's kind of odd, honestly. That's kind of odd that of all the days to do this, it's this day when someone just sees a horse in smoke. Like, that's it. So yeah, so we meet Iridian, played by Charles Dance, imposingly played by Charles Dance. Now this would be, I don't know when this episode was. Oh shit. Okay, I just looked on the general trivia for this episode to see if I could find when this episode was made. There's two pieces of trivia. The first one just says that he also plays Tywin Lannister on Game of Thrones. The second one, sadly, the story is based on the actual persecution as well the public executions of the alleged witches during the Inquisition rule of terror, since the 12th century until the year 1832, when the last witch in Europe was burned alive in Sevilla, Spain. Shit. That sucks. Aw. Okay, so this was... Okay, 2009. So yeah, this was... 2009, this was before Game of Thrones. Interesting. That is the interesting thing. Is like, oh, here's Charles Dance. You know, he looks exactly the same, but yeah, this would be... what is this? Like 1 or 2 years before he was in Game of Thrones, because he was in the first season. Tywin Lannister appeared in the first season. It was later into the first season, but it was still the first season. So yeah, this was only a few years before Game of Thrones. Yeah, so that's interesting. And he is sort of playing I don't know, maybe not a Tywin Lannister type, but I mean, he plays it, you know, like an imposing, intimidating figure, like I've said. So it does sort of lend itself to, being like Tywin Lannister. But, yeah, I don't know. It was definitely an interesting character. I did like him. And there's a part of me that almost wishes he was kind of legit. But I don't know how you would beat him if that was the case, you know? Like, there's a part of me that kind of wishes he was legit, but at the same time, it's like, oh, it's kind of it's also compelling that he isn't legit, that he's a con man, basically. So, it goes in, and that's when at some point he plants the evidence, the amulet, in Gaius's house, basically. Which is interesting, you know, that's just interesting, you know, planting the evidence like that, like a motherfucker. And then, because, he initially suspects Merlin, but then shifts over to Gaius because, just like we've seen throughout this show, Gaius will do anything to protect Merlin. You know, he's laid down his life, like, multiple times, technically, in order to save Merlin. So, that's interesting. You know, it makes sense that he does that. He would do the same thing here. But the fact is that it still doesn't drive suspicion away from Merlin or Morgana. So he would kill Morgana. He would kill Morgana because she has been tainted, basically, by a sorcerer. Like, he's going for a total purge of the magic, which is interesting. So, yeah, that is definitely... That's incredibly interesting that he would still do that. You know, like, it makes sense that he would still suspect Merlin. He would still suspect Merlin, but yeah, still willing to, like, burn Morgana. See, and that's the thing is, you know, I kind of wish that... Oh, well, okay, I don't wish this, but it's like, it would have been interesting to see if charges were leveled against Morgana, how Uther would react, you know? Because with Morgana, I don't know, would it be different? Would he go along with this, with her, you know, burning at the stake? Like, he was willing to go along with, you know, killing Gaius, but... And even then, you know, he had a hard time with it. So, yeah. So that was interesting. But yeah, this whole thing was a setup. Even though this is all predicated on... you know, Merlin making the image in the smoke. It is a setup. He does, you know, throw in more stuff for confirmation that there's a sorcerer. He had those girls hallucinate and seeing a guy, you know, vomiting toads or seeing faces in the water or seeing a goblin dancing on fire and stuff like that. So that is interesting. Just the fact that it's all a setup, that technically this, you know, Witchfinder, the greatest Witchfinder in all the land, is a fucking con man, you know? But I mean, I guess you could almost say it's kind of like modern ghost hunting shows now. It's like, you know, this is all, like, there's no, I mean, okay, maybe I pissed some people off, because I know there's a number of you that actually like those shows. But stuff like Ghost Adventures, where it's like, you know, ghosts, as far as we know, do not exist. And most likely, these shows are not finding shit. You know? They're not finding ghosts. And that's, you know, I made an entire video one time, a couple years back, about Ghost Adventures, and how it's like, it's such a pointless show, because they go in, they apparently find evidence of a ghost, and then they don't do anything. It's kind of a ripoff, honestly. Or, you know, people that can say they can contact spirits or something, which, I don't know, maybe I'm pulling shit out of my ass right now. But the fact is that this Iridian is a con man. You know? Like, how many sorcerers has he actually found over the years? Now, another interesting point is, Gaius kind of was a sorcerer at one point. You know? He used to use magic. You know, they have mentioned that multiple times. He used to use magic. Even, you know, Nimue was like, you know, you used to be just like us. You know, what happened? You know? And then you turned your back on us, basically. You know, he went for, I guess, more science. Like, maybe, you know, we've always said, and it's mentioned here in this episode too, you know, Gaius's pursuit of knowledge. And, you know, nowadays he uses science, but maybe back in the day he pursued it through magic, but he wasn't really a sorcerer, you know? So that's kind of an interesting little thing to point out. Because that's the thing, is that technically, Iridian was on the right track. He was going to find Merlin and find, you know, the actual sorcerer that did this. So the idea that he is just sort of a con man, I don't know, it's odd, basically. It is incredibly odd. But it is interesting. Excuse me. I'm tired, man. It's not as late as when I normally record Merlin, but it's still late. You can see it's dark outside. It's not even 6 o'clock yet, and it's already dark. That's what you call winter, but still. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm still going to be tired for a while. Okay. So yeah, this whole thing, like, there was evidence of a sorcerer. He came in, he had a suspect, and even still, he had to set up Merlin. You know? He had to bring in the girls and their hallucinations. He had to plant the amulet, you know? So that's interesting. And then we got basically beating Gaius into confessing, you know? Just sort of, and it wasn't, they didn't actually torture him, but it was sort of, you know, the shittiest conditions and just bombarding him, just keep saying, you're a traitor and all this stuff to convince him to confess, which is interesting. It was more like, you know, normally when you see, like, you know what, actually, we can talk about Game of Thrones a little bit. Spoiler alert, I suppose. For season 5, I think? Yeah, season 5. Spoiler alert, Game of Thrones season 5. Skip ahead if you don't want to hear this. But, one of the things that happens is when Cersei gets taken by the Sparrows, and, you know, they throw her in, and, you know, you have, what we all call the stern woman. You know, she comes in and just says, confess, you know? You know, they just put her in these horrible conditions. They don't torture her, but they do basically, you know, just sort of bombard her in order to get her to confess. It's basically the same thing that happened here. So you know what? I'm going to say that Game of Thrones ripped that off, even though I'm sure the books came first, actually. Actually, pretty positive the book came first before Merlin. So maybe Merlin got it from there. Wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah, Game of Thrones made that, and then Merlin got it from that, and then Game of Thrones got Charles Dance. Interesting. Interesting little line. A little link between Merlin and Game of Thrones. But yeah, it is sort of the same thing with Gaius. You know, Gaius is just put in these horrible conditions and is just bombarded and bombarded and bombarded. Confess, confess, confess. You did it. You know it. You betrayed. You can now confess. It's all this sort of stuff. It's sort of like mental torture, basically. It's not really physical torture, even though he's in pretty shitty conditions. But it's more mental torture. So that was interesting. And I find it interesting, you know, Merlin went to the dragon because even though, you know, we're kind of enemies now, even though we're kind of enemies, he is still, we do still need his help every once in a while. And he does have, you know, his intentions are always to keep Merlin safe. So Merlin can use that to his advantage, you know? So by talking to the dragon, you know, he hopes to find something, but obviously, you know, the dragon doesn't care, but okay, I could try to help you out if you're, you know, insistent about this. But then he just says, you know, I have nothing. I can't tell you what to do. I can't help you because I don't know what to do. It's the first time the dragon is really left without an answer, you know? So, yeah, that I just thought that was interesting. It's like, this is the one thing the dragon doesn't know what to do about. You know, how do you save someone from the Witchfinder? You know, and I guess that puts a lot on the Witchfinder, you know, the fact that he's that good at his job that even the dragon doesn't really know what to do about it, you know? So that was interesting. The eye drops was also interesting, you know, the fact that they were all hallucinating that, because that was the thing is, you know, from pretty early on, before, you know, just before he even accuses Merlin, he brings in the girls and what they saw, and it's like, well, Merlin didn't do that. He did do the smoke, but he didn't do the rest of that. So that's interesting. Bringing that in, and sort of good on Gwen. Gwen sort of MVP of this episode. Because she has, honestly, Gwen hasn't had lines for a while, so it's nice that she has some. And then with my mind just blanked. I know you can probably tell sometimes when my mind just blanks out completely, but okay. With her figuring out, like Merlin found the flower and then figured out what it can do, and it's like, okay, well, it can cause hallucinations, but how would they get this? And she figured out that it would be something that causes, or something that women would buy to make themselves look more beautiful. So then they go to the guy, and he tells them about the eye drops, which is definitely interesting. Okay, I guess, I was going to say it's weird that he would sell those, but fucking something's going on here. Like, this is the second time my lights have flickered. Okay. I don't know if you heard, but there were both times that my lights have flickered, there was like a snapping sound, a click. I believe that is the backup battery on my computer turning on. In case the power goes out, my computer will remain on, actually, which is nice. Which means I'll still be able to talk to you, actually. We'll be in the dark, actually, but yeah. The only thing is, only my computer is hooked up to that, so I can't, go in and just shut it down. We didn't think this far ahead, honestly. But that's not the point. So if you heard that clicking, that's what it was. So like I said, I was going to say, why would he sell this thing that, specifically causes hallucinations? But then it's like, okay, well, I don't think he would sell that. It's specifically Iridian that forced him to sell it. But that's also an interesting thing, when he says, like, oh, well, women come get eye drops to make their eyes look more beautiful. Which is really, it's an interesting concept. Which, I mean, I guess I can understand that, in a medieval setting, I can understand the mindset of that. And it's just interesting to think about because, yeah, I mean, I guess some eyes, not all eyes are the same, I bet Morgana wouldn't have to do that. She's got them damn beautiful puppy dog eyes. Oh. Like every scene, once again, this was another episode where she didn't have a lot of lines, but she fucking sold everything she was doing. Like when she was talking to Iridian, and she only said like one word after each question, but she fucking sold every single word she said. That woman is an incredible actress, I have to say. So yeah, and I love too, just immediately when they say the Witchfinder, she's fucking shaking, because she knows she didn't do this, but she needs to be careful because technically she is a witch, she is a sorcerer. So yeah, I wrote down the trap. That was interesting, bringing forth the evidence. Luckily, stalling Gaius's execution. And then, so not only, like, if they just went there, they would find the flowers, but Merlin made it, very certain that all of this would be fixed. So he used magic to duplicate all the amulets in his cupboard and all the bottles of the eye drops in there. Like, that is crazy, man. And then, so that would already prove that, Iridian is a sham, but then to also throw in him, puking up a toad, which, made Uther believe he was a sorcerer. Like, that is crazy, man. And then, yeah, getting him to fall out the window after taking Morgana. luckily letting her go before he did that. But yeah, that was another interesting thing. Like, I'm pretty sure Uther was just ready to execute him, but then just the fact that he pretty much tripped out the window and fell to his death. Like, that, it was all circumstantial, basically. And then at the end, I have to say that this was an interesting thing at the end. Gaius is not going to forgive Uther anytime soon. Like, it's going to be a while before he ever forgives him. Because, yeah, this is pretty bad, you know? He just straight out didn't care anymore, you know? He kind of betrayed Gaius, you know? So this is not going to be forgiven anytime soon. And, you know, he really, you know, he kind of told off Uther, you know? It's like, you know, this literally is a witch hunt. It is a witch hunt that he is on. Because he is looking for witches and warlocks and, you know, sorcerers in general. But it's like, yeah, and people get caught in the crossfire of Uther's wrath. And I think maybe now this may start to take some effect on Uther. So, yeah, I don't know. I hope so. So we will have to see where that goes. So, yeah. But that was a kind of a tough scene at the end. But I'm glad it was there. You know, it would be interesting if Uther maybe went through a character arc because of this episode. We will have to see. We will definitely have to see. Great episode. Really enjoyed it, even though it was, you know, the whole reason any of this happened was just because Merlin was a dumbass. Oh, man. But whatever. We can get past that. So, yeah. Like I said, great episode. Really enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to the next episode. We're already halfway through the season, man. Isn't that nuts? I love it, though. So, yeah. That is pretty much that. With all that being said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of my Merlin reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.